Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Holman. Present. Councilmember Kellogg.
Present.
Councilmember Moorhead.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stay in my seat at this time, but there is a group of folks that I want to recognize tonight. I kind of half did it last week or 2 weeks ago, but we forgot to invite you up here. So I want to redo this, and I have another statement that I prepared in that recognition. The approval of all 16 issues by the electorate told us two things. One, they trust your work. And two, they recognize the hard work and extreme effort put into revising our charter to ensure that we, as an elected body, have a sound instrument to work from so as to ensure our efforts are meaningful and substantial. Good government is the cornerstone to the success of any community. And while our cornerstone is solid now, we must work very hard to keep it that way. We must never violate that public trust. So at this time, I'd like to commend the Charter Commission members as I formally dismiss you from your duties and thank you, one and all, for your dedication of time and effort to your community. Your devotion to this painstaking process is appreciated beyond words. As I call your name, would you please rise and be recognized? Councilman Derek Moorhead, Chair of the Commission. Councilman Joseph Burke III. Former Councilwoman Charlene Hubach. Former Councilwoman Stephanie Daring could not be with us tonight. She's unfortunately has the flu. Mr. Calvin Acklin, Mr. Sheldon Castleman, Mr. Timothy Stidham, Mr. Matthew Wiggins, and Mr. Michael Wilson. Thank you all for the hard work that you guys did over the past year. Thank you for being here this evening. We'll move on to personal appearances. There are none, so we'll just move right on into staff reports. Staff reports, Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Krass to make a staff report for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. In addition to my written report, just want to update you on a few design projects that the engineering department's working on. Currently, we are assisting the Parks Department with preparing bid packets for several of their projects. The 155th Street Phase 2 project, which is the bridge replacement, the design is moving forward. We anticipate receiving a design set of plans for review this week. Also, Google Fiber has returned this week, starting in the Remington and Southern Creekmore areas. As we get updates of their locations of work, we will be working with the communications department and posting that on the website. That concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. More of a comment. Mr. Krass, outstanding work on 155th Street. Councilmember Barber and I spoke about it this weekend. I drove it a number of times. We went from a very dark road that was crumbling on the edges to one that you have visibility for as far as your eye will go, with the new striping across there, the edge striping, and the raised pavement markers, not to mention that you're not hitting a pothole every 5 feet across there. It's very smooth. Excellent work, and I know that anybody that drives on that, especially at night, is going to be very appreciative of that. Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Holman, for stealing my thunder for my closing comments tonight. But I agree with everything, and I think I talked to you before the meeting about I almost have to pinch myself when I drive down 155th Street now. It's and as you said, we need to watch our speed because it's a nice road. But I have a request. I got a call today, and I think our communications department may be able to help with this, but I think it would be good information to get out about easements. What are easements, where they are in our yards, And I think that would help a little bit of the heartburn that's going on right now with this Google Fiber project and maybe some future projects, maybe something we ought to do every so often, just to remind folks that those are not city easements, those are utility easements, and those are necessary for our infrastructure, and things will be back to normal when they're finished. So I think that would help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else? If not, Mr. Fearborn?
Thank you, Mr. Krass. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a report for Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of the council. I've submitted a written report, but just wanted to highlight a couple things for you. Everyone is invited this Friday night to the Mayor's Tree Lighting event at TV Hanna Station. That'll begin at 6 p.m. We have several things, including the Ray Peck Concert Choir will be there, pictures, candy canes, the Christmas tree trail will be unveiled that night for the local businesses at the park, as well as it's the coat drive kickoff. So if you have coats and things you'd like to donate, we'll be accepting those that night. So should be a good night. We invite everybody to come out, and that is again this Friday night at 6 o'clock at TV Hanna Station. A quick update on one of our current projects at Memorial Park, which is the trail, the parking lot extension. Tandem Paving is doing an excellent job. We're nearly at 50% completion right now. The parking lot should be poured tomorrow and about half of the trail. So that's really coming along. It's going to be a good project. I think people really enjoy that. Our restrooms, our outdoor restrooms are closed for the season. So just a quick update on that. If anybody contacts you, they'll be opened again around late March, early April, just depending on weather, but they are closed for the season. Tomorrow night, our park board meets in our regular session at 7 o'clock right here. We have one agenda item, and our basketball coaches meeting, recreation and basketball coaches meetings are this week, so kids should get to be playing ball here pretty quick. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. It's Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mustine, for your report. I want to commend you and probably the communications department also on the monthly report. I find it this month much more entertaining, not entertaining, but more inviting to read, along with the photos that you have put in here, and also the graphics and that, telling about the bathrooms closing and that. It seems to me, or it feels like to me, that if it's just written text on a paper, black and white, it just so easy to gloss over and not really pay the proper attention to. So I want to commend you and all of your help with how you put this up, and I very much appreciate it. I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but I want you to know that I really appreciate how you did it this month. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Delgado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mustine, could you please give us a quick update on the activity center at Rec Park? Some of the people in Ward 4 spend a lot of time in Rec Park, so just an update for people where we are on that and a reminder what the timeline is for that. Once we see it going, we want it right away, right?
Obviously the slab has been poured. There was, because the building is prefab, but is also going to be customized when it gets here. There has been more of a delay than we had anticipated in getting the building in. At this point in time, they anticipate delivery of the building on the 29th, and immediately after that, because it is prefab, it will go vertical very, very quickly, but then all of the customization that's going to go in around it, there's cut stone that's going to be around it. The trellis that the council and the park board had wanted out in front is a much bigger deal than we thought it was going to be. And then they'll start on the interior, which obviously is going to be a bit of a slowdown, but they are still in hopes of the July 23rd date, which was the delayed date after all of the negotiations. Even though there's been a delay in the building, they're still hoping for that to occur. But until that building is in now, all of the groundwork has been done, pardon the pun, because that's exactly what it is. That's all done, so there'll be just this stoppage period until that building is delivered at this point.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Mustine. I would ask Mr. Icky to make a report for the Communications Department.
Thank you, sir. Wanted to thank everyone who attended the ribbon cutting for the seed pod at 58 Highway in Dean. Just before the holiday break, we were able to get everything lit up. Everything is going well now, and so if you haven't had a chance to swing by the seed pod at night, it really is quite amazing and something that I think does a great job welcoming folks to our community. Just as we wrapped up that project, the Public Art Committee quickly moved on to their next project as they selected muralist Jacob Duncan to begin work on a mural at Memorial Park. We won't see any paint on the wall at the concession stand probably until later this summer, but we'll begin working with Jacob to come up with some new ideas, come up with some proposals that we'll see before the Public Art Committee as well as the full Arts Commission here in the coming months. Jacob is a muralist from Excelsior Springs, has spent the last decade putting together murals in Excelsior Springs, Lawson, Missouri, as well as Overland Park and Kansas City, and so really excited to be able to work with him and bring him to our community.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone have a question? Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. Again, a comment. Chief, was last year the first year we did No Shave November for the police officers? You know, that was a great cause, and it was really great that you allowed the officers to do that. And last year was just kind of an internal thing. I mean, people that worked here at City Hall, staff knew about it, but because of the communications department, now we've got some visual media work out there by Melissa. She's done a great job with that. So that is a really growing concept, and we're letting people beyond just the internal staff know about it. So excellent work. Please pass that on to Melissa as well. Graphic is on her door if you haven't seen it anywhere else. There's some other places that it's out there too. She did some great work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A comment about the seed pod. I did get a chance to not attend the ribbon cutting, but I watched it from inside of the Sprint store as my whole life was being knocked over like a bunch of dominoes and all my emails. But two of my former students helped me out and got me on a new plan, and it was great. But last night we were coming in, and my wife noticed that the R on the Raymore part, probably that side, that light probably needs to be turned about 10 degrees, just a little bit to light up the R because it looks more like Amore. But it looks great though.
Great, absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Icky. Next week's work session, December 4th, 2017. A number of items are going to be on the agenda for this particular one. We will be bringing the hoarding ordinance back before the council after staff modifications, after council input at the last work session that we discussed that. We will be bringing a number of cars parked on public streets in front of residences back before you. That was one of the second of three items. We will be holding on the towing ordinance because, as the council is aware, staff is going through an extensive modification of code, and that will be coming before you with the staff recommendation that you all seem to approve. At that, we will be inserting that actually into the code amendment that will be coming before you pretty shortly for your discussion. Our intention on code, just so you know, as an update on that, is to bring you the section 1 by itself, which is kind of a general section about mayor and council, similar to the charter. And then in a separate section, we will be bringing you staff recommendations for changes to section 2 and 3 of code, which are primarily the police department and traffic code within the code. Those have taken a long time and a lot of staff review, and there'll be a lot of changes associated with those. So we thought we'd break it into those sections, and then we'll come back to you with 4 and 5 and 6 following that as a group. So the parking too many cars. Third item for next week will be the development fees overview. Councilmember Berenson had asked that there be kind of a look at those and how we come to those and how we calculate the amounts that are associated with the development fees and how those compare to other communities. We will be bringing to you all the policy/procedure for taking over private infrastructure that you all had asked for. And we will be bringing to you, we hope, a review of the endowment fund that we've been talking about. We've had some absences, so that one's a little bit behind where I wanted it to be. We're hoping that the stew has cooked enough so that we can get it to you on Monday night. That concludes staff reports this evening, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Fearborn? Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One quick question regarding the economic development. Were we going to have a brief of the contracting and renegotiation, not in renegotiation, but the retail strategies contract with respect to the second year?
The contract can be automatically renewed, but we can give you a briefing on that next week as well and the status with it.
Yes, I think it's just in staff's. Excuse me, I'd be interested in staff's recommendations on that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. Next item on the agenda is committee reports. There are none this evening. Next item is a consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. I will separate out item A at this time and ask for a motion to dispose of items B and C of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda, including item B, Foxwood Water Tower Rehabilitation Project Acceptance and Final Payment, and item C, Gore Road Waterline Project Acceptance and Final Payment.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve items B and C of the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion's unanimous, passes 8-0. So we'll move back to item A, which is the City Council minutes of November the 13th, 2017. There's our motion to dispose of that.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve item A of the consent agenda, including City Council minutes for November 13th, 2017.
I'll second that motion, sir.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve item A. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Abstain? We have 1 abstention and 7 yeses. Okay, so we'll move on to unfinished business. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3300 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3300 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri approving the final plat of Prairie View of the Good Ranch, lots 1 through 65 and tracts A through E, a subdivision of land located in part of the southeast quarter of Section 20, Township 46, Range 32, part of the northeast quarter of Section 29, Township 46, Range 32, and part of the northwest quarter of Section 28, Township 46, Range 32, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of the second reading of Bill 3300?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill number 3300, Prairie View of the Good Ranch replat.
I'll second that motion, sir.
Motion been made and seconded to approve Bill 3300. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3311 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3311 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri declaring the results of the November 7th, 2017 election.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3311?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3311 declaring the November 7th, 2017 election results on the charter amendments.
I'll second that motion, sir.
Thank you. The motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3311. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3312 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3312 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Dayco Painting, Inc. for the Public Works Maintenance Facility Interior Painting Project, City Project Number 17-281-201, in the amount of $16,443, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3312?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3312, the award of contract for the Public Works Interior Painting Project.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3312. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Can I please have the second reading of Bill 3307 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3307 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri authorizing award of contract to Holiday FX for the purchase, installation, removal, and storage of holiday lights for City Hall in Centerview.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3307?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3307, award of contract for holiday lights at City Hall and Centerview.
I'll second that.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3307. Any further discussion? Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to share, I still, even after some time to think about this, really have a hard time justifying that cost of almost $15,000 the first year, even though the cost does go down after the first year to almost $11,000. I just don't feel right about spending that much money for something that's appearance. I do agree it's going to look beautiful. I think, you know, people are going to be proud of it, but just too steep of a price for me. Thank you.
Anyone else? There's no one else. All those in favor of the motion? All opposed? Motion carries 7 yes, 1 no. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3313 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3313 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri authorizing the mayor to execute an extended and amended employment agreement with Jim Fearborn for the services of a city manager, authorizing approval of this ordinance and execution of the contract herein for city manager for orderly administration of the legal, administrative, and contractual matters of the city.
Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3313?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3313, the approval of the amended employment agreement for the city manager.
Is there
Yes, sir. Since Mr. Moorhead has got a lapsed voice tonight, I strongly second this motion.
Okay. Thank you. The motion's been made and seconded to approve Bill 3313. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 8-0. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3314 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3314 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri calling for and establishing the date of the general municipal election to be held on April 3rd, 2018.
Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask the city clerk to make a staff report on this particular agenda item.
Raymore City Charter, Section 9.1, calls for the general municipal election to be held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in April, or as such day is mandated by state law. This bill calls for the next municipal election to be held on April the 3rd, 2018. Positions for city council members from all 4 wards for 2-year terms are open. Candidate filing begins December the 12th, 2017, and ends on January 16, 2018. Open seats are held by Ward 1, Councilmember Townsend, Ward 2, Councilmember Moorhead, Ward 3, Councilmember Holman, Ward 4, Councilmember Abdelgawad. City offices will be open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., with the exception of the city-observed holidays of December 25th, 26th, January 1st, and January 15th. That concludes my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3314?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3314, calling for the April 3rd, 2018 regular municipal election.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3314. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 8-0. Thank you. Okay, please have the first reading of Bill 3315.
The first reading of Bill 3315 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri amending Schedule 1A of Title III, traffic codes by establishing speed limits within the city limits of Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. Any questions?
Staff report.
Oh, a staff report, yep. Sorry. Go ahead with the staff report.
Thank you.
We've talked about it so much, I figured, we'll go on.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Krass to make the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. Mr. Mayor,
I
members.
throw you off your game, did I, Mikey? Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, at a recent work session, council discussed making some adjustments to the speed limits on 58 Highway to make them more uniform, and in particular, a standard 40 miles an hour from Dean Avenue to J Highway. At the close of the work session, council directed staff to bring forward a bill making these changes. Staff is presenting Bill 3315 for council consideration.
Thank you, sir. Now questions of staff. None? Okay. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3315?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3315, amending the traffic codes in relationship to 58 Highway.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3315. Any further discussion? Ms. Abdelgawad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just share again, as I shared in the work session when we talked about this. I like the idea of having a consistent speed limit all the way down 58 Highway. However, I'm just concerned about the safety of people who are pulling out onto 58, especially in the area in the middle of town where the S-curves are. Because of the way the ground humps and the slopes of the driveways there, I'm just not sure it will be very safe for people to pull out into traffic that's going faster than it already is. I feel like 35 is a reasonable speed limit for that part of 58. So I can't vote for this.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if this was when I was on planning and zoning or shortly afterward, but as we begin to put more and more businesses in between Sunset and especially Dean, as we increase those businesses, and I think we will continue to do so, I think 45 is just a little too fast, and I think this is a well thought out move. And over the course of the time that we had work sessions on this, I drove it and talked to my son, who's turning 16 this month, and we just talked about, what would be the advantage of this being slower, what would be the disadvantage of this being faster, or whatever on each of the parts as we would drive. And I really think it was well thought out. So I approve of it. Please, thank you.
Mr. Moorhead.
I'm in general support of this. Again, I think Mr. Burke's on to something, that when we look at the development on the west side of town and we see all the new businesses coming in, there are a lot of cars entering that road, and at 45, that's a little dangerous. We do have accidents that do occur on those stretches, but I like the idea of the normalization, because when you think about where the speed limit changes down to 35, all the years of practicing law here and the fixing of tickets of people who have been caught just before Woodson, when there's really not much change there. But yet you go the other direction, and it's like the start of a NASCAR race. The moment people at Sunset going west, accelerating, but yet they're accelerating into more greater traffic, making it more dangerous. I like the idea of the commonality of the speed limit. In 10 years, the amount of growth, we'll have to do this anyway. Doing it now doesn't make it any better or any worse. I do respect the concern about the S's, though, and I do believe that there should be at least some thought and consideration towards that. But as far as the rest of the way, I like the idea of 40 miles an hour. Now, out of respect, I have received a number of calls over the last 2 weeks and some emails of residents in Ward 2 saying there is no need for a change. And I do at least want to honor their concerns they've expressed to me. But I believe overriding in this instance, the growing safety concern, I believe, justifies the approval of this. Thank you.
Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am generally 90% in support of this. My opposition is just like LaSonia said, is the area between the S's, particularly coming out of the businesses on the east. They are on an incline going onto that section there, and I've driven my motorcycle, my car, my bicycle there. I frequent the hardware store a lot during the summer. I love that store. What I don't like about it is trying to get out on a 58. That is my concern. I like the idea of making 58 uniform minus that, but that bothers me. With that said, I am probably going to support this, knowing that there's stuff that staff can probably do, like what's been talked about in work sessions with the yellow signs of a suggested speed. I'm rather uncomfortable just for that certain section of 58. But I also reflect back many years ago. I don't think I'm that old, but I guess I am. I remember suggesting or trying to bring up the topic of changing 58 to a lower speed limit in front of where Culver's is, all the way down to Walmart, because at that time the people over in Foxwood Springs were my constituents, and they were in favor of that, and it fell on deaf ears, you know, and I'm not slamming my former colleagues, but, you know, just to give a little difference here, how different 8 years is, you know. Like I say, Sonia, I'm right there with you. I have the same concerns as you do. I thank you for expressing them. I think you probably did a lot better than I could, but I will probably support this. But I'm going to encourage staff to continue to look at that section between the S-curves. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I think in general I'm going to support this, though I do appreciate everybody's thoughts and concern. It's interesting. My office is off 58, so I see folks driving up and down it all the time. I would think from a staff's perspective, from our police department, having a consistent speed limit would be easier to manage that. And also, we live in a world too, if you ask most people what the speed limit is on 58, most people are going to say 45. And that's what they pretty much drive down 58. So I think having a consistent speed limit pretty much from almost end to end of our city will kind of change that mentality. You know, now it's 40, or it may be 40, hopefully it passes. And I think that will help with our citizens to understand it's 40 miles an hour, and I think that will help for our safety.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Holman.
Thanks, sir. I think operationally is not going to make much difference. It's a 5-mile drop in speed limit throughout the 45 sections and a 5-mile-per-hour raise throughout the S-curves. I think, generally speaking, human behavior would tell you, unless someone's out with intent, they're naturally going to slow down through those S-curves a little bit. I know I do. It's just a natural thing to do when you're driving an automobile versus on a straight and clear and flat road. My hope for this, and I think you mentioned and expressed it when you brought this up, Mr. Mayor, is that hopefully Operation Greenlight will be able to take this change where we have consistency all the way across 58 and utilize that for better traffic flow throughout the city. I don't think we have bad traffic flow now, certainly better than the sections of 58 back to the west of us, including the bridge, but if we can gain some more operational efficiency in moving traffic through there via this ordinance, I think it's well worth it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is probably for the police chief. So the part of 58 that's 45 and going to 40, are we going to have a little bit of leniency for motorists in the month or two changing that speed limit when it goes from 45 to 40?
No.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
When I say motorist, I mean me.
Oh, you? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. As long as I'm clear on who it is. Absolutely. We are all about public education, and if this ordinance passes, then we will want to make sure that the motoring public knows that that speed limit is changing, and we'll be giving probably lots of warnings in those first weeks following the change in the speed limit.
Thank you, Chief. Maybe we can have this gentleman put some lights around him, you know, so people can see it for a while.
Christmas lights.
Christmas lights.
There you go.
Thank you. Yeah.
Anyone else? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-1. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3316 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3316 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Schedule 1A of Title III Traffic Codes by establishing speed limits within the city limits of Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Kraft to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Council also discussed at a work session raising the speed limit on Kurzweil Road from 155th Street to 58 Highway from 35 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour. At the conclusion, council directed staff to bring forward a bill making this change. Bill 3316 is being presented for council consideration.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Mr. Holman.
I think you did an engineering department review. You did a review of this when this was brought up. Is that correct?
Yes, we did.
And your findings were that the construction and safety or condition of the road would support this change favorably from an engineering standpoint. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Mike. Is there a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3316?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3316, amending traffic codes for Kurzweil Road.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3316. Any further discussion? Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. I had expressed reluctance at this change during the work session. I did take Councilman Berenson's challenge to heart, and I did drive the road. I unfortunately was not able to do it at night at Councilmember Abdelgawad's suggestion. I found 40 to be kind of a natural speed through there, going northbound during the daylight under good conditions. Now, that's by far a long distance from probably a good, thorough a test of that road, but that's what I found to be true, and something that we want to remember, that speed limits and speed enforcement should be done or changed for one reason and one reason only, and that's if we can do them safely, or they need to be done to improve safety. And I think it can be done here. I still have some, there's always that a little bit of doubt in the back of my mind, but given that, I would take the position on this much like I did the changes when we allowed the curb cut for the new Raymore Marketplace and allowed traffic to come in. We let a fourth lane of traffic to come into that intersection. We know that's a tough intersection for collisions as it is. And so I would look at this the same way. I think that we can do this, but I will certainly keep an eye on it. And to that end, a related measure, I think it would be of value to us as a group and to our citizens if going forward, the staff would report back to the council on either a 6 or 12-month basis on the top, say, 5 or 10 traffic accident locations at a work session each time, and let us know things like, have these changed over the last 6 months to a year? What are the trends? Are you seeing changes in causal factors? Because this body, as well as passing legislation, also delegates the dollars of the city, our taxpayer dollars. Do we need to look at putting money towards Mr. Krass's group change to a traffic light there? What kinds of things can we do to make our citizens safer? So I am in support of this, but I think that it is incumbent upon us as a board to continually look at this, not simply deal with it as it is handed to us via these types of scenarios.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moorhead.
I also embraced Mr. Berenson's challenge, but I turned it over to two experts in my household, my wife and my daughter, who drive that road at night regularly, coming home from work, and they both spoke adamantly in favor of this. I was initially concerned about sight lines during the day. Again, farming equipment's only there during the day. Gore intersection with the replacement of the bridge on 155th, that should decrease some traffic at that intersection. I don't see a concern at all. The road was very safe to drive it. I shouldn't admit this. I may have accidentally driven over 40 to test the quality of the road, but I am not saying that on the record. But 40 clearly was a comfortable route that I felt very comfortable with. And both my wife and daughter said at night they felt very comfortable with that speed too. That spoke very loudly to me. So I'm very adamant in favor of this.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To kind of go with what I was saying earlier, discussing some of these things with my son as we drive around. He rides with me to school and back, and sometimes I make him go places he doesn't want to go because I need to get things done. But on this stretch of road, because it's slow and there's not a lot to look at, I think it invites younger drivers to pull their phone out going that slow, and going just a little faster maybe invites them to keep those phones put away. I know that sounds strange, but I spend a lot of time with this age group every day, and their phones are so important. I mean, you might as well, you know, ask them to cut off their arm before they put their phone away. But the other part of it also, though, as I was driving to Branson this weekend, I saw a sign that said, "Hit a deer, get a turkey," and it was for an auto collision place. And I thought, what a weird, but it certainly made me pay attention, and that is probably the main danger on this road is deer, especially at night. But that's certainly anywhere in Missouri, so I don't think that would really be a factor unless we were going to change every road in Missouri to keep deer off and build walls. Thank you.
This has spawned a response from Mr. Moorhead. Mr. Moorhead?
This is actually for a fellow council member. Mr. Holman, when you were giving your cheat sheet to the students, hit a deer, get a turkey. That's what they need to tell their teacher.
Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, took the challenge of the Ward 4 council members and drove that, and I'm glad to see that we took this seriously, and I am perfectly comfortable with this 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. I think the road will be just fine.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I want to do, I want to comment and thank Mr. Holman for his input that he just gave tonight. I think that's worthy, and I think that's valuable, not only in this instance, but any instance where we make this kind of a change. I think it'd be nice for staff to come back and report back, whether it's whatever's appropriate, every 6 months for a period of a year and a half, 2 years. That way we can see what those changes are doing in the immediate future. So I again, thank you, Mr. Holman, for the suggestion, and I'm right there with you, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? If there's nothing else, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 8-0. Okay, please have the first reading of Bill 3319 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3319 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving the final plat for Westbrook at Creekmore 13th plat, lots 336 through 340, and lots 363, 364, 369, and 370, and tracks double J, double K, and double L, located in the southwest quarter of Section 4, Townships 46 North, Range 32 West, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
I would ask Mr. Carteret to make a staff report for this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Cooper Land Development is requesting approval of the Westbrook at Creekmore 13th final plat. This is a 9-lot, single-family subdivision phase within Westbrook, proposed to be located along the existing Creekmore Drive. It would be at the very southern terminus of Creekmore Drive. With this final plat, there's actually going to be no additional street construction completed. This 13th plat of these 9 lots is really infill as part of the 12th plat. So we'll be utilizing the existing road improvements that were done as part of the 12th plat. The Planning Commission, at its November 21st meeting, did vote 6-0 to recommend approval of this final plat request. Mr. Steve Warger, the project engineer for Cooper, is here this evening if you have any questions of the developer. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff or Mr. Warger? Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Carteret, I read that the floodplains were reevaluated, or maybe that's not the correct term. How did the determination that these were no longer in the floodplain go about exactly?
If I may, council member, if I could have the project engineer address that question? Thank you.
Good evening, Steve Borger with Renaissance Infrastructure Consulting, 5015 Northwest Canal Street, Riverside, Missouri, 64150. Part of this area of the floodplain here is in what they call an unstudied area, and you are allowed to go back and get a LOMAR letter of map revision based on fill, or a CLOMAR, which is conditional, but in this case we did a LOMAR since the fill area was already done, to change the floodplain area, because you can impede on the floodplain as long as you're not in the floodway, and that's what we did in this case. Part of this is with FEMA, as far as going through that, you can do the LOMAR, and you can do it two different ways. You can wait till after it's platted, submit a final plat based on that, and that's what we had tried to do, but then again, they weren't zone lots because it wasn't officially out of the floodplain, so we've decided to pull those out of that plat, go in and get that designation, and then come back with that plat. So it all went through the FEMA regulations, and we've got those letters, and staff has those also.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Any further questions of staff? If not, is there a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3319?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3319, Westbrook at Creekmore 13th plat.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3319. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 8-0. That concludes our formal agenda for this evening. We'll move on to public comments at this time. If anyone from the public would like to address the City Council at this time, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. If there is no one, yes.
I would be remiss, since at my last meeting, I thought it was probably the American government students' last chance to get up and speak in front of this body. But I see we have new members here tonight. So I would encourage any of them, and they're all looking around at each other, to come up and speak about anything that the councils talk about or anything that's important to you within the city. The mayor has graciously offered you 3 minutes. I think last time we told them they had to because they waited till the last minute. So please feel free to come forward and speak to us this evening. All right.
I'm Cecilia Brown, and I live on 411 North Madison Street in Raymore, Missouri at 64083. And I just want to say that it's really refreshing to see that you guys care about us, just kind of in general, and like our safety, and you know, we all drive and we all, you know, drove here tonight and all that stuff, and I really, you know, it's refreshing to hear that what we learn about in government is real, you know, so I just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anyone else like to address us at this time? If not, we'll move on from public comments. Thank you for stepping up tonight. Move on to the Mayor Council communication. Mr. Moorhead.
I have no comment.
Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. Cecilia, thank you. Cecilia, I just happened to bat 1,000 on this. I knew Anna Patterson last time, and I know Cecilia since she was very small. Her brother played soccer for me for years. Outstanding young people to have here in our community, very active in a lot of different activities, and actually just ran into Cecilia last week when we were out at a local restaurant, so good folks to have here. So I always try and give the American government students a little bit of a Cliff's Notes version in case you slept through the meeting, and I got to concur with Councilmember Moorhead. I would put a little segment in there that said, Councilmember Burke said he spoke about the importance of the hit a deer, get a turkey, and it made him pay attention when driving. I thought that was a great statement, and I think you should get extra credit from your teacher on that one. Tonight was pretty straightforward. You're going to get out of here in less than an hour. If you were to come to the meeting in 2 weeks, you will get to hear my now famous State of the City address using Star Wars terminology. It's the week before the new Star Wars movie comes out, so if you want to come back and be entertained or bored to death, please feel free. Pretty straightforward. We paid some bills on the water tower rehabilitation project, the Gore Road water line project. That was just stuff that was already done. Staff presented it to us for final approval, and the staff will take care of paying the bills. A little bit of zoning work with the Good Ranch replat, and what was the last one we did? Creekmore 13th. So that's just some zoning changes within neighborhoods and within the city that are looking to build or build additional houses. Verifying the election results from the charter amendments that the mayor spoke about, and we had all the fine people in here for, was it a year, Mr. Moorhead? Your group was in here for a year all the time and trying to figure out what our version of a constitution, what changes it needed over the last 10 years. A lot of hard work by them, a lot of hard work by staff. Everybody you see up here was involved in that process as well. Had some painting work done, or we're going to have some painting work done at the Public Works Group. We're awarding a contract to that person. We're going to be putting up Christmas lights for the first time this year on City Hall and our new community center, Centerview, behind us. And calling for the date of the next municipal election to be April 3rd, as well as changing speed limits on 58 and Kurzweil Road. So extra credit points if you didn't follow along real tightly. All the new items will have to come back to us for a second reading. They have to be approved a second time before they go into law. So if you go out and tell everybody, hey, you better slow down on 58 before Chief Zimmerman comes out and starts writing tickets, you've actually got at least a 2-week grace period, because that will come back to council at our next meeting. Would have to be approved then. Mayor signs it into law, just like the little bill that sang the song, and then that's becomes official.
You're hating yourself. I'm not sure they saw school.
That has been a while, hasn't it? So thank you for being here tonight, Cecilia. Thank you for having the courage to come up and speak in front of us. I know everybody up here at the dais enjoys that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I already spoke about seeing the ribbon cutting, and I got all the workers from Sprint to come to the window, and we could see because the trees didn't have any leaves on them, and they were pretty excited about that. They wanted to know where Belton was and where Raymore was, and like there's a diagonal line. But I wanted to thank my fellow commission members. You can always remember that people should now address you forevermore as commissioner. I always thought that was a cool term when I watched Batman when I was a little kid, so make sure you keep that. But I also wanted to thank the staff that was there. We did a lot of discussing what the staff brought to us, but the staff did a lot of work, and we gave them homework every week. And so we really need to thank our staff, city staff, because a lot of that work was done by them, and we kind of signed off and tied it all in a nice little bow at the end. So we want to make sure we give them their credit. Also wanted to thank Public Works. 155th is great to drive on. I've driven it in an old truck and also in a Miata that's about 4 inches above the ground, and it's like driving a go-kart, and it's nice and smooth in that go-kart, so that's awesome. And my children have gotten to hear me talk about how we had an agreement with Kansas City probably, I don't know, 10 times. I'm sure they're tired of hearing about it, but it is exciting, and we'll look forward to the bridge getting taken care of at some point. Also wanted to thank the staff in advance of the mayor's Christmas tree lighting. I know Parks and Rec are going to be out there doing a lot of work this week, and we really appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, too, I'd like to recognize and thank the Charter Commission for all of their hard work. I know that was a tremendous project, takes a lot of time, and I know there was a lot of homework. And I, as a council person here for the city of Raymore, I didn't take that lightly and appreciate every minute spent. I do want to recognize one certain person on there that I asked to volunteer, and that was Matt Wiggins. Matt just recently became a father of twin boys, just recently. So not that he had to do the heavy lifting through that, but his wife was doing the heavy lifting while he was working the Charter Commission. Matt certainly has a future serving our community. It may have been postponed a little bit, and he's got a couple of boys to raise for now, but excited for him. Mr. Fairborn, glad you accepted our terms and are signed on for another year with the city. I certainly can't imagine our city without you. And, you and I today worked together, and thank you for that. And I know the citizens of Raymore thank you every day. But I think I got a lot of notes here. Oh, Mr. Holman is quick to, and I am too, I guess, to ask for staff to come back with a report. I would like to know, the students here today and have been all year, how many actually take his comments and get, what kind of grade do you get for that? I'd like to get some feedback on that, because I'd like to know if what he does, it has some value or it doesn't have value. So we need somebody to come back and report that to us so we can either continue this or maybe enhance it or stop it or whatever. But thank you tonight.
That was great. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know how I could follow that.
I know.
Wow. I also would like to echo my thanks to the Charter Commission. The one time that I had an opportunity to sit in on a commission meeting, I think I was probably the only citizen at the time to attend one of those meetings. They were discussing the removal of the language around the military law, which I thought was rather, a simple decision. But the discussion that ensued was very important to the topic. So, Mr. Mayor, we can't go out as veterans and enforce the new speed limit. That's been removed from the charter, so it's military law no more, sorry. But again, thank you to the Charter Commission, because what you did, as has been said before, that is our Constitution. And for the next 10 years, that's what this legislative body will base its decisions upon, in concert with the revised Missouri statutes. Thank you, sorry. But again, thank you for that. It was very, and the citizens voted on it and approved those recommendations. So your hard work and efforts were very well worth it. Again, thank you.
Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll just quickly also echo the thank you and words of appreciation to the Charter Review Commission members. Your work was definitely worthwhile and is valued. I also want to just give a quick shout out about the No Shave November. As much as I dislike it, and I like to share that, but it is for a great cause. And so if you aren't familiar with that, take a look on our social media, or is the information on the website too? On the website, on Facebook. And I know that our PD is pretty close to meeting their goal, so if you've got a few extra dollars to throw their way, like I said, it's not my favorite time of year, but it is for a great cause. And then finally, just extend that invitation again for the Mayor's Christmas tree lighting on Friday of this week at 6 o'clock at TB Hanna Station, in case you weren't tuned in for the beginning of the meeting or came in late. Mr. Mustine shared that at the beginning of the meeting, but I wanted to shout that out again. The Mayor's Christmas tree lighting is Friday this week at 6 at TB Hanna Station. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take a moment to thank the Charter Commission from the bottom of my heart. Hats off to you. Job well done. Appreciate everything you did, the time spent, and it's very much appreciated, and it shows by the polls that came back from the voters. So well done. Congratulations being discharged. That's a big thing. So good of you to do that, Mr. Mayor.
I didn't want to make them think they had to come back and actually work on it again.
Well, I'd worry about a mutiny.
Bit of blood, sweat, and tears on that already.
Other than that, also, I'm going to thank the students for being here tonight, and particularly, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. What's Cecilia. I'm sorry. Hi. I was hoping one of your friends would get up and give us a beatbox or something like that, but that didn't happen. But no, thank you for being here, and thank you for the kind comments and seeing how what we do affects you all of your lives. Because that's what our focus is safety and the welfare of the community, and you are part of it. So thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your concerns. It helps me, and I'm sure it helps my colleagues. The other thing that I guess it always feels good to go in and, everybody calls me Mr. Raymore at work, and I'm kind of proud of that, I I get razzed about it, but that's okay. I lost my I Love Raymore button, so if anybody from the Historical Society is listening, I need another button. But the comment I got just last week, one of the guys I work with, he's an engineer. I won't say his name, but anyway. Him and his fiance are talking about buying a house, and he come to me and asked me, maybe you can't answer this, but maybe you can. I'll answer anything you want about Raymore. And he says that we are on the list for them to move here, and I'm like, fantastic. He says there's so many communities that we can't move to because they're not on the list. I says, hey, come visit. I says, we'll be sure to take you around and show you the town. So it's really, really nice to have people out there that recognize who we are and what we have to offer, and it is always a pleasure to be the cheerleader, you know, and many times that's what I feel like I am, but it's, again, very proud feeling. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of good points made tonight. I keep crossing off everything as people go on here. So I will quickly also thank the commission as you guys get discharged, and I'll add honorably discharged, if I may, sir.
There you go.
Yeah. And one other quick thing, too. I'm sitting here, and I'm in 21 years in the Air Force, I served some short tours overseas, and I got to work with a lot of different units. Some of them were good, and some of them were outstanding. And there's just this feeling you get when you work with an organization that clicks as well as this one does, from the citizens in our town to the city staff that supports us to the mayor and the council here. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to point out that I think this is an outstanding organization, top down. We got some very nice emails from the mayor and the city manager, and I wanted to thank you for that too and echo your comments. So that's what I had to say tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Whoops. I'm going to throw my pen at you there. Also, again, thank you to the Arts Commission members that are still here in the room, or excuse me, the Charter Commission, because there is an Arts Commission member over here. Mr. Roberts is here with us tonight. The Charter Commission I sat in on a lot of those, and you know, as I reflect back on my time in the room with their discussions, they really looked finitely at every issue that was in our charter. And I can really appreciate now the 16 points that were passed by the electorate, knowing that they recognized that hard work that was put into that. So, and thank you for sharing your time with us this evening and coming up and allow us to stand you up and applaud to you, because you guys did a great job, and I appreciate you not only as commission members but as citizens of our community. And thanks to the Arts Commission, as I get to that. The Arts Commission did a wonderful job in those two projects, the one at Centerview and the Seed Pod there. That is kind of been also ingrained in our new branding that we did, and getting a lot of positive comments about that. If you haven't been by there at night, it is beautiful at night with the lights on it. And Chet Redman, the artist that put those together, was a very talented young man, also a Raymore resident. And thanks to the hard work of the Arts Commission and the continued hard work. And then as far as the Christmas tree lighting on Friday, please try to come out. Ms. Hubach snuck out after the initial recognition, but we are going to invite her. Don't tell her. We're going to invite her tomorrow to be the guest light turner on her, if you want to call it that. So we're excited about extending that invitation to her, and hoping that she'll say yes to that, because it is kind of late notice. So I may be tagging one of you other guys if she says no, but hopefully she'll say yes. And that's all I have this evening. Do we have a reason to go into executive session, sir?
We do not, sir.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor? It's unanimous. We're adjourned.